Ibuki, the top of the tech tree IJN cruiser line, it's not what I would call a well-respected ship. In fact, it had been performing badly enough to be visited by the Wargaming buff department a few updates ago. So how has she been performing now, post-buff? Better, I would say, but still, this might not be the easiest cruiser to come and play at tier 8. Now for the record, this is the black version of the ship. For all intents and purposes, it's the same as the tech tree version. There are some minor differences I'll share with you along the way. The match is on Sleeping Giant, and it's the perfect match to highlight what I love about Ibuki and what I hate about Ibuki. At the start of matches, you might be wondering, where do I take this ship? Me, personally, I try to look for island cover if it's available, because if you can safely fire from cover, why wouldn't you? And if you don't have that, that's okay. Typically, I would sail in for 30 seconds, give or take, and then abruptly turn out, leaving my stern facing the enemy. In this video, I want to touch on agile versus non-agile builds. In the past, I played Mogami almost exclusively with the full agility build, double rudder, blah blah blah, 39 knots or so with the 3-second rudder shift time. Ibuki, I've opted more for the prop mod build, starting and stopping playstyle rather than staying at full speed. The results are essentially the same. I'll put them up here on the board for you. Here are my stats for Mogami. Here are my stats for Ibuki. You can be the judge of which you think is more effective. And that's kind of the foreshadowing for my build. Accuracy, propulsion, rudder, and then gun range and dispersion. My go-to commander is, of course, Azerlana Tago for obvious reasons. With the special skill Arsonist, she enjoys a buff to fire chance and HE shell damage. It's really, really powerful. If you're free to play, that's okay. Mikawa is an exceptionally strong cruiser commander as well for agile or a hybrid build. Inspirations could depend on a lot of things, but I've been leaning more towards Rune, Baltimore, Mikawa, Mimbelli, Karl von Muller, etc. On my agile build, I used Rune and Baltimore to kind of buff the rudder, and then Rune helps with the turret traverse, which is slow on IJN cruisers, and then on the Atago build, I used Kuznetsov and Mikawa. The additional range may be necessary with Kuznetsov, especially if you have a stock Ibuki, and the gun range starts off at 14.1, so it's not a lot of fun to play a bone stock Ibuki at tier 8 and legendary tier. If we're looking at Ibuki's stats, the health pool is the first warning sign of the poor survivability of this ship. 39,000 health is almost dead last. The Sejong is a little worse, of course. And the heals are pretty average, so you're not going to heal back a ton of damage, especially if it's Citadel damage. Now, the armor scheme is okay in a few ways, but it's not that great either. It is infinitely better than the Mogami, don't get me wrong. We have some 27mm of armor on the sides and on the deck to work with. This is going to help against 380mm battleship guns quite a bit, and there's even some swatches of 32mm of armor. That's great. The 27mm it's okay, but it's only useful against a handful of BBs up here at tier 8 and legendary tier. Most battleships will simply overmatch your armor. This ship eats battleship rounds terribly, and maybe that's the reason why. The armor seems to arm the shells well enough that you can take catastrophic damage right into the citadel that is above the waterline. Make no mistake, one wrong move in the Ibuki and you're done, son. Ibuki's guns are really good though. Like most IJN heavy cruisers, she has brutal HE rounds and a great fire chance, 17% stock. You can see in the background here, we can devastate battleship superstructures, and the Kronstadt is not safe from me either, even though it's a well-armored cruiser. These big IJN shells pin 33mm of armor, so the 32 found on most ships is not going to keep them safe from Ibuki's HE rounds. The reload is not that quick, but with that big shell alpha, the HE DPM is about middle of the pack. Now the armor-piercing shells, I have mixed feelings about. Yeah, they're 203s, so in the right scenario they can be good, i.e. flat broadsides and more lightly armored ships, and we'll showcase it a little bit on an Albemarle here. But keep in mind, without using punch-through, I think the AP shells are going to be a little bit lackluster. You could put punch-through on there to pin some more armor. I would say test it out for yourself, see if that works, but it's really nothing compared to, say, the Buffalo or the Donskoy. We can look at this chart, and at 10 kilometers, we see the Buffalo armor-piercing shells will pin 50 millimeters more of armor than the Ibuki, and of course it has the increased pin angles, so really, Ibuki is centered around high explosive shells. The Torpedoes, you have 16 of them. Their range is 10 kilometers, which I feel is a little disappointing considering the Mogami had an 11-kilometer range, and most ships up here seem to have 10-kilometer range, such as the Drake, and I believe the Neptune. So Ibuki, it doesn't really have the characteristic long-range IJN cruiser torps that you get used to in the line. Still though, they deal lots of damage, and you have quite a few of them. One of the small stats, Ibuki, the tech tree ship, actually has better torpedoes than the Ibuki B. They're faster and they deal more damage. Why? I don't know. Usually the black ships are identical. I suppose the Bismarck kind of broke this mold, and so did the Ibuki B. But yeah, there's just a little stat difference. What you really need to know about the Torpedoes, though, is that they have rear firing angles like the rest of the tier, meaning you basically have to be pointing your stern at the enemies to fire them. Ibuki does have a little better angles than the Mogami here, but not by much. Mostly I use them for zoning areas out at the beginning, such as caps or places that I think enemy ships are going to sail to. My torp accuracy in these boats, the Mogami and the Ibuki both, is 1%. So usually I just throw them down and what happens, happens. Maybe I need to get good, but yeah. The AA is 5 kilometers, but a paltry AA DPS of 206, so don't expect a lot here, especially against legendary CVs. Luckily in this match, there is no legendary CVs. Ibuki does have a great top speed of 35 knots. You're going to beat out a lot of the pack here. A really great rudder shift time and turning circle. So it can be a great agile cruiser if you choose to play that way. My Makawa build had this ship going about 39 knots with a 2-second or so rudder. It is really annoying to try to hit an Ibuki like this when you're playing in a battleship, but you're going to trade off quite a bit of damage output to run that build. And the last stat we care about is the concealment, and at 12.6 kilometers, it's really exceptional. And that makes it easier to get around the map and also to disappear when things get hot and heavy. Since you have a pretty long reload of 12 or 13 seconds, if you're getting focused a lot, you can simply stop shooting for another 6 seconds or so and go dark. And this is a big part of IJN cruiser gameplay, and I'll admit, I've gotten myself killed just because I didn't abuse the concealment. I was too stubborn, I wanted more damage, and you just gotta try to be better than that, basically. It's very hard to let off of the guns, because getting big damage numbers is the name of the game. It's what we all want, right? And hey, I'm especially guilty of this. After all, we're running a YouTube channel here where we like to show fun, exciting, and big damage number games. But if you're feeling the heat, you're getting focused by a lot, which you're using Ingenious, it's going to tell you how many ships are focusing you. You can simply stop shooting and disappear. With Makawa on our build here, the detection is 11.3 kilometers, so it's very good. Usually you're fighting from farther ranges than that, so it's quite easy to go dark. The game in the background, it's not going well, and that led me to make some desperate moves. I was trying to pop out and torpedo the Yamato just to get him off the board. As you can see, the red team got all of the early caps, and our team doesn't seem to care much about the caps, although our Italian cruiser over here has finally sailed onto sea cap. The GK smacks the Yamato before my torpedoes get there, so thank you, sir, for that. But yeah, we desperately need to get in the cap points. The ships that are left, the DM, I believe there's a Donskoy as well. There's a Pommern. It's ships that I can't really face in a 1v1 and reliably kill them. And here is where my love-hate relationship starts with the Ibuki. Pushing a Republique, a Pommern, there's just not many ships that you can 1v1. So sometimes you're really reliant on teammates to win. And as this game continues to unfold, if you have some tips where I went wrong and what I could have done differently to save this one, feel free to let me know. I don't always play the perfect game. The love part of the relationship, well, I think they are phenomenal in dealing damage. The speed, the stealth, the hard-hitting guns, and the fire chance is fun. I love the torpedoes. I love the kind of kiting play style. And with Ibuki and the 27mm armor, I love to bully battleships that only have 15-inch guns. But again, there's not very many of them. Palmer, I believe, is one of those, but it has pretty nasty secondaries and torpedoes, so we don't have a choice but to continue to fight from cover here. The IJN cruisers, yes, they lack some consumables like radar that gives them utility. Ships like the Buffalo and the Donskoy are still some of the best cruisers at the tier just because of that amazing utility. But in Ibuki, it just means you play the match a little bit differently. You play the long game. In a radar cruiser like Buffalo, Des Moines, or something like that, you get in close to the cap, you work on cap control early on in the game, scare DDs away, blah blah blah. Whereas Ibuki, you play the beginning phases of a match, burning the shit out of anything that moves, and then as enemy ships are taken off the board, you start to make your moves. Like in this match, you try to be a little more aggressive, hunt DDs, take caps, blah 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 blah, but it doesn't always work out. I would say that early aggressive plays in cruisers like this, they can work, don't get me wrong, but one wrong move or one uncalculated BB salvo will send you back to port without a doubt. Ibuki seems to work well with caution, calculation, and keeping your head on a swivel. Now the Pommern is going to finally die here coming up, and then we can start to head towards the sea cap. As of now, including Ibuki B, we have 12 cruisers at tier 8. In terms of how competitive these cruisers feel to me, I would put the Kronstadt, the Buffalo, and the Donskoy among the best and the most powerful. Ibuki though, I don't have any qualms at all with putting her in the top to middle. I would definitely choose Ibuki over the St. Louis, the Rune, and the Carnot. Sejong and Drake, I still have not yet got to test those ships because tier 8 is too expensive for me to collect all the ships up there. Seattle is new to my port, so I want to test her more before I decide how strong that ship is. But Ibuki, I absolutely think it is a very, very powerful and good ship, although sometimes not having the radar and things like that can be detrimental to her win rate. Anyways, the background game is going to come to a tragic end and a sad loss. If I could have rushed a cap early on to get the points, I would have. I just didn't see the opportunity, I suppose, that I could survive it. So I played the long game, hoping our Shimakaze would cap out A or B, or our Napoli could use his insane speed and concealment, stealth, blah blah blah, and smoke to grab C cap. But alas, it just wasn't in the cards today. So as the timer runs out, let's take a look at what our friendly ships are doing. And that is going to end it for us today. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about the buffed Ibuki. I would love to hear from you. Be sure to leave a like if you thought this video was helpful or provided some sort of value to you. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, be sure to subscribe for future videos so that you don't miss any content, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya.